Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going to be focusing on wax seals, and we're going to be creating a card, but I also want to share with you some tips and tricks that I have learned along the way. So I have a little melting spoon here. I think this one is from Spellbinders or Ultinew. There's a couple of companies who make them, and I just have a candle down below. I pop in some little wax melts to melt over the side. Now this is one option. I actually just got a couple of new little stamps here. This one has these gorgeous bees on it. Now the option that I used to do is I get my non-stick mat. This happens to be the stencil mat from Waffle Flower, the mini one. And I just tip the wax on, and then I can pop my little stamp down. I tend to hold it in place for a minute, and that way I can kind of get a more even circle to my wax seal. And then of course you leave it to dry for a minute or two, and then it hardens pretty quickly. And then you get this gorgeous little, this one is a bee, but obviously there's different patterns. But I want to show you what I have been using. I picked this up. I used to have a different one of these actually, and I had to get a new one a few months ago, but I find this much easier. Now this is the Silicone craft mat. This is not necessarily for wax seals, but it is designed with those in mind as well. It's also meant for watercoloring and all those good things. But I like this one because it has the circles. Now I know that some people thrive in the imperfection of the irregular shaped circles that just doing it on a sheet creates. I quite like that evenness that the circles create. And that's okay because we are all different. So I like this one because I can pop the wax in and it creates that really nice even circle for the outside. Now if you have any little bits of wax left over, I tend to drip these onto the sheet, just these tiny little drops, and these are essentially like enamel dots and things. You do need to bear in mind that they're not going to be as hard. So like if they're going through the mail, they will need to be protected, or there is potential that they will get squished. But look how even and beautiful that circle is, that gorgeous little bee. But we're going to do a couple of things today to enhance the look of these gorgeous wax seals that I love doing that are super easy. So there you can see the two shape comparisons, and yeah, it's up to you. It's a personal choice thing. I don't mind, but I quite like the circles, and I have found that very helpful, and it means that I use my supplies more because I'm happy with the outcome. Now I just went ahead and I just do lots of these all at one time. I find it easier when I have out the equipment that I just sort of, do a good bunch of them. And these Deco Color pens here, now these are what I use to color my wax seals. And all I do is I just go over the design lightly, and then this is going to catch all of those raised bumps that the stamp created, and this just really makes it stand out. Obviously you don't have to do this at all. They look gorgeous as is, but you can see with this gorgeous little bee, I think this just absolutely makes it pop. Now you can choose whether you want to go around the outside and do the outside too. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and it just depends. Usually I don't do this step, the colouring step, until I get to the actual project that I'm creating, because that will tell me if I want to introduce another colour like a gold or a silver, or if I just wanted to keep it in line with the turquoise. Sometimes you already have enough colours going on in the background that you don't need to introduce another one, but then sometimes it's just a gorgeous, clean and simple card, and the border coloured in like this, once this is dry, it is absolutely stunning, and you can see the shine that it creates as well. And it's just so easy because these have a little tip on them, like a flat-ended tip, I guess, that you can just run over the top of your image. Now this is, I'm sure, not the only thing that works. You could try if you had some wax, like gold wax. I don't know, maybe Simon Hurley's Lunar Paste, if you went in ever so gently with a tiny fine brush, perhaps, I don't know, give it a go. But this is just what I have that works. And whilst I am on a bee theme, I recently got this one. I recently purchased this. This is from All and Create. This is the Beautiful Bees stamp set. And I love this one because they are realistic bees rather than cartoon bees. And that was something that I had been looking for something a little bit different that I can use for focal points. But is still sort of universal. You can use it for different occasions. So I'm going to stamp this out in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and this is just beautiful. I mean, these stamp wonderfully, and I'm going to actually emboss these because I want to do the quickest colouring possible. Now I'm going to make these sort of bumblebees, so I was picking a couple of yellow, orangey, I guess, wild honey and mustard seed. I actually ended up using the wild honey colour, and my colouring was just really just popping some colour on. There was no technique, there's no shading. It's such a little, a little area that I am colouring. But I did think that for the wings, I just like to add in a little bit of colour, and usually that comes in the form of tumbled glass. Just a tiny little bit there to sort of, give them something, but not too much at all. And I'm using a water brush as well, so that is, nice and watered down. It's not too direct or too dark. And then I'm going to create my background. So I take a little strip of mint tape. Now this is a well cut down piece. I think this is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 perhaps inches, and then I'm going to come around with some of that same bright yellow ink. This is going to be actually a pretty basic card, I guess, a couple of things going on, but I really just wanted the bees to stand out. I want to have that stamped bee, and I also want to have my wax seal as the two things that sort of stand out on this card. So I'm going to do a couple of little background things that are just going to add a little bit to it. One of them is this Christmas branch here, and it doesn't help that I'm using the Christmas paper pad from scrapbook.com. I just like this light grey colour that they have right at the back here. This has nothing to do with Christmas, but we always want to make sure we can use our Christmas products all year round. And I know I've said it before, but this Christmas branch die is one of my absolute favourites. The versatility of this one for me is just, it's up there, and so I have been really enjoying using it. Now I'm actually going to fussy cut out one of these bees, but not quite what you think, because there are a lot of little legs and things going on here that are going to be tricky to fussy cut. So I just go around the wings and the body, and then you'll see in a little bit how I fill this out later on. When I'm fussy cutting images and I have stamped them in black ink, I like to go around with a black marker just to make my fussy cutting look better than it actually is. And then I'm going to take some burlap ribbon and I just cut the edge off this. You might have twine already that is going to work perfectly for this. I just separate all the pieces and then I have twine ready to go as well. This one here is the Hexagon Layering Stencil Duo from Waffle Flower, because I didn't have any other hexagon stencils. Now this one of course creates gorgeous borders, and it does create a full image because there are 2 stencils that come with this one, but I just want a little bit of sort of honeycomb. Now side note, look how much ink was already on my brush. I haven't inked this up at all, and so that is why I always test before I come in on my project. I always test my brushes because I use one brush for all the yellows and some of the oranges and so I never know how much ink is pre-loaded onto my brush. So in this case I just want a really light honeycomb in the background there, and I'm just going to repeat the stencil, shift it up and keep doing it so that I get that overall look rather than just the line that the stencil actually is. So remember that even if you don't have the perfect supply, I'm sure that you can find something that will do something similar. My next idea was, if I couldn't find any sort of stencil, was to cut out a hexagon die and then just use that, repeat that over and over again side by side, and I would just ink through a piece of paper. But I found one that worked, thankfully, and then I'm going to add my twine in, and I have a nice little crisscross just a smidge over to the right there. Then I put some glue on the back of this one. I don't mind if I don't put it on all of the branches because I don't mind a little bit popping up and having a wee bit of dimension. I used exactly the same branch for both of these, and I have just cut pieces off them to make them work and sort of create a little bunch in the background there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I create a lot of wax seals all at once. I prefer to do that when I have my supplies out, and sometimes, just depending on whether you like to use liquid adhesives or you like to go with dry adhesives, these are what I use. They are the Wax Seal Stamp Adhesive Circles, and they are 1-inch double-sided adhesive circles. Yes, you could probably just use like a paper punch and cut some of these out of double-sided adhesive sheets, but I do find these very handy, and it was, I think, a couple of dollars for 50, I think, of these. There's heaps of sheets in here, and this just means that I pop these on the back of my wax seals and then I leave them stored like this, and that means when I come to pop this down on my project, it's just ready to go. I don't even have to think about how I am going to adhere them. Now here is where I'm going to move on to the bee, and remember I did the fussy cutting and I cut off all of his legs and things. Well, we want to put those back, so I have got my stamping platform and I'm going to stamp this bee, and I'm doing it in here because I have layers already. It's going to stamp over top of some of that foliage as well, and so I'm giving it a good wee press. I actually end up getting a really good impression, and I don't need to do it again at all. I thought I might have to, but I didn't have to, which is great. Then I add some foam tape to the back of my panel. I make sure that I've got my card the right way around, and then I will pop this down on here, and then this card is going to come together very quickly. So I'm going to use some liquid adhesive for this one because I have that twine underneath there. So I've put quite a bit of adhesive on, and I am going to hold it down to make sure I get really good contact.